Previously on Ready to Die.
I still feel the same way about the DA office. It's a piece of shit. Okay. So, we got to get those people out of there. If we want to continue to have justice, we got to get them out of there.
In case I take the supervision.
Mr., let's go on and have the conversation.
I've just asked you whether or not it was a coincidence.
Had absolutely nothing to do with this. It's interesting that we're here about this money.
So I said, bring me all your information, bring me all your proof so I can look it over. And they did. They brought me picture evidence, witness testimony, and a lot of it. I contacted a paralegal up in Pennsylvania who's actually working with me to write a brief for a recommendation for an investigation to the Georgia State Bar for an investigation into these allegations. So that's where the process is now. I'm writing up this brief right now so we can submit it. I'm going to have an attorney oversee everything before I submit it to give it his or her stamp of approval, just to make sure that it looks good and it's written well.
You know what? Let me add something to your mix. I appreciate what you're doing. We've been looking into Fani Willis too. And might I suggest that you strongly focus on conspiracy? See, under American law, you can commit a felony conspiracy by doing a legal act in a legal fashion if you conspire to carry it off. There is ample proof that Fani, with Letitia James, with Bragg, with Smith, with other people, had meetings, multiple meetings, wherein the topic of discussion was how do we get Donald Trump? And that is a conspiracy. In other words, you have 10 guys who've been operating businesses in a geographic area, and somebody comes in with a deep pocket and decides to offer all kinds of sales. So what you do is the bunch of you agree amongst yourselves that you are going to reduce your prices to a point where this newcomer can't match. So that's nothing technically illegal about reducing your prices. But it becomes a conspiracy if there is an agreement to undercut somebody else on purpose. It's generally embodied in our antitrust laws dealing with business, but it's also a conspiracy. So there might not be anything wrong with a prosecutor, say, going after Donald Trump. But if a group of them get together and say, hey, we're going to go after Donald Trump, we're going to bend the rules when it comes to due process and the Bill of Rights in terms of the protections it provides, so we can slap him with some criminal convictions or the inconvenience and expense of having to defend something we know is for the exclusive purpose of harassment or eliminating him politically, that becomes a conspiracy, and under federal law, it becomes a felony. All that has to happen is they have an agreement to try and do something to him. And if any one person who can be shown to be part of this agreement does any overt act, then all of them get caught up in a conspiracy charge. So we have overt acts by Bragg, Letitia James, by Smith, and by Fani Willis down in Fulton County. So that would qualify as a conspiracy under federal guidelines because they are public figures. In particular, public figures charged with protecting the public. The sentencing scheme for them is a lot more severe than it would be for an ordinary person, if that'll give you some guidance.
Oh, definitely. And just because, my background isn't in law, I take every advice I can get. Some of the things that have been brought forward is another conspiracy charge where Misha Maynor, who is a state rep here in Georgia, she was a Democrat who turned Republican. She had a stalker that was stalking her, was arrested and put in jail. During his time in jail, there's actually audio proof of Fani Willis talking with somebody else and the other person convincing her to go ahead and not press charges against Misha Maynor's stalker and to let him go. And sure enough, about a week and a half after that phone call, that person was released from prison, and he's still stalking Misha Maynor, and she's still going back into court to testify against this and to fight this. So this is just one of the many allegations that are coming forward through all this investigation that I'm doing personally, that it's just a long list of corruption.
Might I add another little something to look into? It's called money laundering. See, you've got $7.5 million that was appropriated by the state legislature to Fulton County to deal with catching up on delinquent prosecutions. You've got $2 million that was appropriated to Fulton County to deal with prosecuting sexual offenses, and $500,000 or $500,000. That totals out $10 million that can't be accounted for. That's why the state legislative committee wants to get her in front of them to account for the money that she got appropriated that now seems to have disappeared. All of those cash transactions are going to look bad when they start getting broken down. Next thing is you might look into assisting the feds in doing this. It's making a knowingly false statement to a federal agency or agent. What is that? She indicated that she could not afford to pay $8,500 in past due taxes, so IRS accepted her representation on pain of federal perjury. And what winds up happening, they let her pay it off in installments, but that fool gets on the witness stand and under oath testifies that at the time in question, she had $15,000 in the cookie jar in her house. So obviously that is a deliberate and intentional misstatement. I used to represent federal defendants. The office did too. And we would have defendants with 17 felony counts and 19, 23 felony counts. And we'd walk them on everything except the last one, which was making a false statement to a federal agency. And how did they do that? They'd walk in and they'd talk to the IRS guy or to the FBI, and they'd say, we have you here because you are under investigation for tax evasion. Well, what do you have to say about that? I don't know anything about it. Well, they just told you something and they recorded you hearing it and they recorded your answer. I don't know anything about it, but they just told you something about it. So they bust you on that count and you now have a conviction, and they can bring in everything else that you did to enhance your punishment. That's Biden did that in 1981. But anyway, along with Byrd and Stennis. So thought about getting hoisted by one's own petard.
So I have a question. You mentioned that you kind of exposed Fani Willis for having an association with a gang member.
Yes, that was brought forward to me, and so it wasn't until they actually showed me a picture of the alleged the gang member and her. And normally, I mean, she's even said that she's had associations with gang members, but when you look, and normally if it's an association and if it's a picture, you're standing side by side, or if you have your arm around each other. This one, the guy's leaning back, she's leaning on his chest, he's got his arm around her. So if any other innocent bystander were to look at this picture and say, what does this look like to you? They would say, this is definitely a couple or someone in a relationship or someone who has close, intimate ties with each other.
I'll give you another phrase. It's called the appearance of an impropriety. Members of the bar, judges, prosecutors particularly, are instructed to avoid the appearance of impropriety. Even if there was nothing to it, it certainly looks improper. Real heavyset guy with a scraggly gray beard.
Yeah.
And she's all hugged up under him. And that certainly gives the appearance of an impropriety. And it was her obligation as a member of the bar to avoid that, which she did not, since there are apparently multiple pictures accordingly. So bottom line is, hey, that's another thing that's actionable. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with what's about to happen with this thing with the state legislative committee. The legislative body is in recess right now. Were it in recess, all this committee would have to do is to instruct the sergeant at arms to arrest Fani Willis, and he could literally execute a physical arrest and bring her in handcuffs before the committee. Since it is not in session, the second pattern process of relief available in Georgia is for the state legislative committee to go in front of a circuit court and get subpoenas issued. And apparently they've done that, and she refused to comply. So she was trying to get a stay of execution, and the circuit court properly ruled to say, hey, you dishonored the subpoena. It's too late now. You've already done what's necessary to start action against you. So you don't have any grounds right now unless they try to go after you and enforce you again. But they can get an order by a circuit court that she complied. Next thing that happens is they have a third remedy, which is a legislative one. They can retaliate against Fulton County so that the taxpayers get real upset because money gets cut off from Fulton County because a vital government entity refuses to comply with the state legislative committee assigned a responsibility to recommend, award, and deliver taxpayer funds. And they have a right under Georgia law to investigate to see how those funds that they appropriated are being spent. So she put herself in one of the dumbest positions I've ever seen. In the 50 years I've been practicing law, I had my favorite candidate for dumb crook of the half century. And she just took the title away. I've never seen anything that stupid in my life. And she's supposed to be the head prosecutor for a major American city.
Well, I wanted to ask you, so by any chance, that association that apparently she was extra friendly with, that gang associate, was that gang associate had any ties to the YSL group or members or case?
That's what the allegation is. And also there's some allegations out there that there was 2 gang members that she was friendly with, both of them. Anyway, both of them got into a conflict with each other, which was a shootout, basically. Both of them got arrested. However, only one of them got charged and the other one got released with no charges filed at all. So that's another thing. I'm having the case pulled for that, so I can look into that a little bit more closely as well. There's, like I said, there's just a lot of layers to this onion. So it's just kind of peeling one piece back at a time to make sure that I can get everything uncovered. Another thing that really, really upsets me is when I saw her go before a church And she's preaching to everybody about how she's doing this in the name of Jesus and almost comparing herself to Jesus when Jesus was prosecuted, and she's doing the same thing and she has to stand up. And yet she knows what she's doing is wrong. And she knows what she's doing is improper and misconduct and just criminal. And yet she's up there lecturing people about this. That's another thing that really drove me to really look into this too.
It's kind of disgusting, really.
It is.
Now, your investigation that you're going to present to the Georgia Bar Association, correct?
Yes.
And when they look over, what you present to them, what are the options? They can disbar her from the state of Georgia. That's a possibility. And is that what you're seeking, for her to be disbarred?
Eventually, what I'm really seeking forward is now just to request the investigation into it. From what I understand, the Georgia State Bar, you have to request the investigation first. So you got to get through that hurdle first. So once they approve that there's enough evidence there to open up an investigation into disbarment, then it goes through several processes before it goes through the state Supreme Court for disbarment. So like everything, you take one hurdle at a time. Look at the next step, get through that next step, and look at, always know what your end goal is. But you don't want to jump too far ahead. I just want to keep focused on what the next step is and just getting that approval for that investigation to get going. And from what it sounds like, there's more than enough this evidence and other things that are being brought forward that I don't think they have a choice but to look into this.
Well, disbarment is one of the options. Discipline is the other. And also the problem that she runs into is she essentially would disenfranchise the Fulton County District Attorney's Office by making everything that she's done suspect. So the bar committee, if they uncover criminal malfeasance, they can recommend that some prosecution be done. And that would mean that the state Supreme Court would appoint, subject to the approval of the state legislative body, a special prosecutor to look into it. Also, what you have, since what she did was get involved with trying to persecute the person that is the next president of the United States, that would certainly involve the feds, who would probably be best served by a legitimately appointed special prosecutor to look into it. And there are probably all kinds of things that would be uncovered. There are federal funds that have been commingled in this whole thing, which gives the feds automatic jurisdiction. You got federal candidates, which would deprive other states of their opportunity to have their electoral college members have individuals that they might support that they've indicated they chose to do. You have a whole can of worms. This thing just gets absolutely ridiculously convoluted.
And what's even more surprising is by how much she was voted or she was elected in the last election. It just kind of shows you that people don't really pay attention to the person. They just kind of either vote for the party or they just kind of vote for what they're used to.
They're used to being told what to do.
Which is why she gravitates to the church, particularly the Black church, because that is still, and of course, you're in Georgia, the Bible Belt, that is still the bedrock when we're talking about the Black community. Go to the church, and if you got the church on your side, then you have a whole lot of votes and people supporting you, which is a problem. She has your investigation that you're going to present to the Georgia Bar Association. She has the open records. She was subpoenaed, and she also has the federal government breathing down her throat. I wanted to get your thoughts on this because it was just this week she was supposed to hand over January 6th records, but she did not. She declined, and I think she was subpoenaed to do that. First, I don't understand, how is she caught up in the January 6th communication with Special Counsel Jack Smith?
That's the part of the conspiracy. They're aiming to get Donald Trump, so they're plotting on how to do it.
So why won't she hand over those communications?
It might be incriminating, so she's going to have to say, I exercised on my own behalf the Fifth Amendment. I declined to provide evidence, but it can be subject to subpoena powers, but then somebody would have to go through some changes, which could be gone through, but she's going to say this might be used to prosecute me personally, and she'd have good grounds on that, but let's see her assert it. And there are other ways that they could get the information, which is, guess what? Can you see serving a search warrant on the district attorney's office? I mean, that is so just like, this is a major city in the United States of America, and their prosecutor's office is subject to a criminal search warrant.
Well, I want to ask Mr. Chavez, does that help your investigation? Everything else that's going on with her and all this corruption and speculation and subpoenas, does that help your cause with her?
All of this adds to it. It all proves intent of everything that she's done. It also proves her character, because she can't say that, this is something that, she overlooked or, that she was, she did and through misguided communication or anything like that. If you can prove a pattern of it, then you can see that she's got a pattern of corruption. So all of it together, just like in any case, circumstantial. But if you have so many pieces of evidence that point to the same thing, then it just proves the case even beyond a reasonable doubt.
Well, I haven't seen anything this bad ever.
Well,
this is
you also, when I spoke to you on the phone, you were saying it's a lot of distrust, public distrust, and I'm pretty sure she's not the only person in politics or in the DA's office in Fulton County. Like, it's others that are just like her in other counties and other cities and other states, but the spotlight has been on her all year. So listen, I really appreciate you coming on, but anything else you would like to share with us regarding Fani Willis and this investigation? Because this is something that's going to be ongoing, so I would love to have you come back on. But is there anything else you wanted to mention, with this investigation into her?
Well, just one final thing, just to make sure everybody understands that these are all allegations until everything's proven during an official investigation, either federally or through the state. So everything that I'm saying is just everything that I'm bringing forward based on what I'm uncovering. But I'm not going to stop at this, and I'm going to keep pushing forward. And peel back the layers, and if there's other people involved, get them in there too, just because people need to have trust in their government. Not that, we can't root out all corruption, but at least if we can send a message that the people aren't going to stand for this, and we're going to rise up, and we're going to pull you out, and we're going to call you out for this, then you need to, and especially in today's society where we have social media, like 30, 40 years ago, you could get away with this stuff. Now there's so much social media, everybody knows everything about everybody, so it's harder to find out, and harder to hide, and we will find it.
By the way, I'll volunteer to help you guys out. Miss Dana, please share my contact information with the gentleman. Feel free to call me. Might not always get me, but what the hell? I always have hated wrongdoing like this, because particularly in the context of the fact that this type is always so hypocritical, namby-pamby-poo, so self-righteous about what they're doing to everybody else.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
And one more thing, because you did say something, it's like, yeah, with the technology, it's hard for people to hide all of the deviant things that they're doing. But even with us knowing, she still got voted back in.
Yeah. And
isn't that a shame?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, we know all this information, but the people behavior is not changing. So I don't know what it's going to take for people, particularly in Fulton County, to actually wake up and see that this woman, cannot be trusted, and that her office completely corrupt. So.
Amen to that.
And the fact that people are totally brainwashed, that's pretty much a whole nother segment of another podcast. I could go on for a long time about that as well. So
I would definitely love to have you come back on in New Year, in January, and we could pick up where your investigation is, where it's at by that time, and also how people are brainwashed with where they vote or just not paying attention. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this vital information.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Is there something, do you want people to follow you anywhere on social media, or you're not into that?
I'm on X or Twitter. It's not about me. It really isn't. I don't really want, if they want to follow me, that's fine. I'm not really going to post stuff on there about this stuff in any case, but it's just really about getting to the truth.
Yes. And we have been talking about her since January, February of this year. So definitely want to have you come back on to give us an update of your investigation, and anything else that may come up. You can always come up here and share it to the public.
Okay, thank you.
Don't get mad when you see me with my prostitute. I see in time it takes a toll on you square ass dude. I can't believe the power I possess that make you so mad. If it ain't the pimp music, it's the game I have. You know how stupid you look at me when you hating my friend. I probably have to blast your ass if I see you again. You on a bus stop kissing that bitch till it came, and say goodbye for 30 minutes cause you got no game. Who you talking to like that? Don't question me, ho. You the bitch in kindergarten, I got her mouth washed out with soap. Ho, I'm a pimp, I'm from Pomona. I got game, I got class, I got sucker repellent on me, homie. I'll beat your ass. I hear you peppin' now, huh? Well, ain't that nice? Ain't never sent a prostitute nowhere a day in your life. And tell your homies I was at a music grinder with my prostitute standing right out front. Then tell them when you had yours, bro.